And perfect. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, all of our schools from across the province. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really looking forward to showing off this virtual field trip. This is a virtual field trip that myself and Louisa filmed with Craig a few weeks ago, about a month ago, I guess, at this point. Maybe a little bit more. And we're really excited to show it off. There's a lot of really interesting information here. And Craig does an awesome job, as you'll see in the video, explaining all the different ways that we can, save energy in different places. So maybe before we start the video, Craig, did you just want to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so hi, everybody. I'm Craig Porter. I'm the lead energy manager for agriculture at Efficiency Nova Scotia. I've been with Efficiency Nova Scotia since 2012. I'm a graduate of St. FX University, Environmental Science and Interdisciplinary Studies in Aquatic Resources, which is a mouthful to say. And then I also graduated from NSCC's Energy Sustainability Engineering Technology program. And I'd also like to give a special shout out to H.M. McDonald, who's on the call with Miss Hicks' class. That's my son's class. So welcome, Miss Hicks, grade 1 and 2.
All right, awesome. Well, that's wicked. So thanks so much, Craig. We were going to watch the video now. So we're going to show you the virtual field trip. It's about 14 minutes long. And then afterwards, we're going to open up our live Q&A session. So any questions that anyone has about the video or about anything that we talked about, or anything that they want to know that wasn't included in the video, now after the video is going to be the time to ask. Craig's going to be here to answer any questions you might have. And yeah, it's going to be a great time. So thanks for joining us, and we're going to go ahead and hit play. Hey there, Green Heroes. Jonah here from Green Schools Nova Scotia. Here we are at Lindenwright Holsteins. We're going to be talking to Craig and Harry about how they are finding ways to save energy on the farm. Let's go. Hey there, everyone. I'm here with Craig and Harry, and they're going to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Craig Porter. I'm the lead energy manager for agriculture at Efficiency Nova Scotia. I've been with Efficiency since 2012, and I've been doing this role since 2017, and I'm here to help farmers save energy on their farm.
And we like that when we have someone who wants to save us money in our pocket. So welcome to Lindenwright Holsteins. I'm Harry Van der Linden. I farm here with my wife Joanne and my son Jason. And we're about 4 kilometers outside of Antigonish. And this is our calf barn. We'll let Craig talk about the energy savings we've done here.
All right, Craig. So tell us what we got going on over here.
Yeah, so in the calf barn, one of the major energy retrofits that farmers can do is upgrade their lights. Here in the calf barn, we actually did LED lights. And one of the benefits about LED lights is they both save energy as well as provide additional lighting to the cows so they can see better. They're able to see their food, and they seem to be enjoying it.
Well, I see something going on behind us here, Craig. Where are we now and what's going on?
Yeah, so we're here at the heifer barn. So for those who don't know, a heifer is a teenager cow that's almost old enough to go into the grown-up cow barn. And behind us, what we see is the curtains going up. This is part of a natural ventilation system. And what natural ventilation is it actually, just like opening a window at home, it allows the breeze and the air from outside to go into the barn naturally. So it saves energy by not having to run a fan.
Okay.
So instead of running fans, you just open the window, essentially.
Yeah, I imagine it helps get the cow poop stink out as well.
It does, yeah.
So this area is a little less glamorous than the barns, but it seems like some important stuff happens in here. So what are some of the things in here that is helping the farm out?
Yeah, so this is the mechanical room of the farm. So this is where all of the energy is being used and saved. So one of the things we have here above my head is our plate cooler. So what this device is it exchanges heat from the milk with well water coming into the barn. So it allows the milk to be pre-cooled. So it actually cools the milk down as it passes through it. And that heat is exchanged with the well water coming into it that then goes out to the barn to water the cows. So the cows get a nice drink of warm water and the milk gets pre-cooled before going into the milk tank.
Okay, so cold water, warm milk, and then
Yep,
warm water, cold milk.
Exactly.
Oh, awesome. So, Craig, is this a massive tank of milk?
Yeah, it is. So this is the bulk milk tank. So this is where all the milk comes once it's extracted from the cows to be cool.
Okay.
So in this room, we have the milk cooler, as well as a cool device over in the corner called a heat recovery unit.
Mm.
So once the milk comes out of the cow, goes through the plate cooler that we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
it goes into this tank to be cooled, which is done with a refrigeration unit. And that refrigeration unit, before it pulls the heat out of the milk to cool it, but before that heat is evaporated outside, it actually runs through a heat recovery unit that
Okay.
is used to preheat domestic hot water that the farmer will then use for cleaning, washing, sanitation, that sort of thing.
Wow.
So the heat recovery unit will actually bring the temperature of the water up to about 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And then they'll use an electric hot water tank to bring it up to the temperatures required for cleaning, which is
Right.
about 160 Fahrenheit.
Okay, so the milk comes out of the cows.
Yep.
It gets the plate transfer, helps
Yep.
heat up some of the water, already gets cooled down.
Yep.
And then the slightly cooled milk comes in here,
Yep.
gets cooled down even more, and that heat that we're taking out of the milk is then being used to heat more hot water
Yep.
before it gets dissipated.
Exactly.
So we're not wasting any heat, or we're wasting very little.
yeah, we're trying to recover as much heat as possible. Yep.
That's a miracle of modern science.
Yeah,
That's
it's
crazy.
and it's one of the things that makes modern dairy farms very energy efficient.
Okay. So I gotta say, this looks a lot like some sort of mechanical spider. What exactly are we looking at right now?
So these are actually the milking cups. So this is actually what the farmer will use to milk the cows. So each one of these cups will attach to an udder on the cow, and will automatically extract the milk from the cow.
Wow.
Then it gets pumped through a variable speed milk transfer pump out to the bulk tank to be
Okay.
cool.
Well, this is a big active barn. Why don't you point some stuff out here? What is using energy on the farm?
Yeah, so this is the main dairy barn. So this is where all the milking cows are housed. And some of the things you'll notice here are the giant fans above the cow's head. So we talked about the natural ventilation earlier, but sometimes we require additional air movement. So we have these big circulation fans that are energy efficient. So they use about a third of the energy that a standard efficiency fan would use to help move the air around to make sure that the air is nice and fresh. And one of the other cool things that we see over behind us over here is the cow comfort brush.
Okay.
So that's a big brush that the cows can
Hold
use.
on, Craig.
to
Let's
clean.
about to get run over by something here.
Yeah, so this is our feed pushing robot. This is one of the newest employees of the farm. So his job is to drive up and down the aisles and move the feed in for the cows so that they can get a nice bite of lunch. And as you can see, it has sensors to ensure that it doesn't run into other people, and it'll try and go around you.
Yeah. Cows don't eat me, so that's good. Well, the sun is peeking out from behind the clouds. What does that mean for this massive solar array behind us?
Yeah, so one of the things that modern dairy farmers can do is put solar on the roof of their barn. So here on this farm, there's about a 90 kilowatt solar array, which takes the energy from the sun and the light from the sun and turns it into usable electricity on the farm that runs all of the equipment that we looked at earlier today.
Wow. And so is this a fully, like, are we pulling any electricity from the grid to power things, or is most of it being brought from the solar panels?
Yeah, so the way it works on this farm is they're doing something called net metering,
Okay.
where during sunny times, like right now, they'll pull electricity from the solar panels.
Yeah.
And if there's times when they're not using that electricity, but it's sunny, it'll actually push that electricity onto the power grid.
Okay.
And then at night or times when there's no sun, the farm will actually pull electricity from the power grid so that they have a full supply of electricity all the time.
Okay, awesome. So any electricity that the farm is making, it gets pushed to the grid if they're not using it.
Yep.
And then anytime it's not sunny, they're pulling electricity from the grid, and they basically measure both ways, and you pay for the difference.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the year, if you've used more electricity than you generate, you get a power bill, or if you've produced more electricity than you've used, then you'll get some money
You
back.
get some money back. That's not so bad. I'd love to get money back from the electric company.
There you
Wow,
go.
that's awesome. And do all the buildings have solar on them here?
So we have three at this farm. There's 3 buildings that have solar panels on them. Each one of the buildings is a 30 kilowatt system,
Okay.
but they're all fed to the same meter.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. So, Craig, we've seen so much of the farm. We've seen how you're saving energy. And is that basically your job? You're helping the farms to save energy?
Yeah, so my day to day is basically I get a call from a farmer, says, hey, my power bills are too high. What can I do? I'll meet with them on site, walk through their operations, look at all of the energy consumption that they're currently using, look for opportunities for energy efficiency. Then I'll go back to my office, I'll make some recommendations, do some math to figure out what the actual energy savings could be on the farm.
Yeah.
I'll present that to the farmer. I'll also show them what sort of rebates are available for the upgrades that they're doing. And then I'll follow up with them once they've completed a project to measure and verify that the project that they did is actually saving them energy.
Okay, awesome. So it's not all just hanging out with cows and doing that sort of stuff.
I wish it was, but there's some math involved as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, math has a million applications.
Yeah.
So stay in school, kids. When you're helping these farmers save money, it seems like it's also saving money, but it's also saving energy. So how is that helping, things like the climate crisis and global warming and things like that?
Yeah. So for when you're saving electricity, in order to generate that unit of electricity, Nova Scotia Power in the province here is burning a fuel usually, and that fuel emits emissions.
Right.
So for every kilowatt hour that we save, that's 1 less kilowatt hour that we have to generate, which is then 1 less kilowatt hours worth of emissions that we're generating as well.
Okay. So things like the solar panels and just using less electricity to cool down the milk means we're burning less coal, we're burning less oil to make that electricity in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. So it's saving money and it's saving the planet at the same time.
Exactly. So that's it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's wicked. And how did you get involved in this field of work? If you had to, tell a kid who was interested in doing this sort of thing, where would you tell them to get started?
Yeah, so I mean, I got it started with energy efficiency in university.
Okay.
But even before that, I've always had a passion for the environment. So back when I was in elementary school, we actually had a program at our school called Trash Cops, where we stood in the cafeteria at lunchtime and helped other students and staff in the school sort their garbage to ensure that recycling goes in the recycling, paper goes in the paper. It's translated to energy, because one of the ways I see that we can save the environment is through energy efficiency.
Yeah.
Because we're always going to need energy, so if we can use it more efficiently, it creates less waste.
Wow, that's awesome. And is that sort of did you have a direct path into that? You knew going to university, I want to work in energy, or was there a way that sort of a zigzagged you?
Yeah, it's kind of a zigzag pattern. So originally when I went to university, I wanted to do environmental sciences.
Right.
And look at aquatic resources. So actually looking at environmental protection of our lakes, streams, and oceans.
Okay, cool.
But at that time, it was kind of hard to find a job. So I found a program with the Nova Scotia Community College called the Energy Sustainability Engineering Technology Program that looked interesting to me at the time. And so I went and did that course for 2 years and got hired at Efficiency Nova Scotia right out of university. And I've never looked back.
All right.
So I never originally planned to be in energy efficiency, but I just happened to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, energy, I feel like it's one of those things, the more you learn about it, it's like this giant rabbit hole that just keeps going and going. And there's always more to learn about it and more new things on the horizon for it.
Absolutely. And the other thing is I never expected to be on a farm again.
Yes.
So back when I was a teenager, I worked on a dairy farm for about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I said, never again. It wasn't the life for me. And, full circle, here I am helping farmers save on their power bills.
Wow. That's really, really amazing. So Craig, if I want to find a job in energy, do I have to be working at a dairy farm, or do I have to be, helping farmers find ways to save energy, or what options do I have?
The options are basically, the possibilities are endless.
Okay.
So energy, humans use energy in almost everything they do. And where we use energy, there's opportunities to save energy. So, and it affects every type of job that's out there. You know, electricians are the ones that are actually wiring up some of the energy efficiency opportunities and products that we're seeing here. You know, the electricians install those lights.
Right.
Plumbers are you know, plumbing the piping and stuff for the dairy barn milk cooling system. There's consulting jobs and efficiency sales jobs like us.
Yeah.
There's jobs like you where you're, you know, going through the schools and actually teaching other kids about how energy efficiency works and how the environment can be saved by, you know, highlighting some of the jobs that folks are doing. You know, possibilities are endless.
Okay, well that's really great to hear, because I know maybe not everybody wants to, you know, be an electrician or work on a farm, but knowing that there's a lot of different ways to help the environment and help the energy crisis while it's happening.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Craig. This has been an amazing experience. We got to see some super cute cows, some really cool technology, and just feel good about, you know, our next steps in the energy transition. Do you have any last words you want to share with the folks watching at home? Any last pieces of advice or anything like that?
Energy is everywhere, and you know, doesn't matter if it's a farm, a store, or in your own house. There's always opportunities to save energy, and I recommend reaching out to Efficiency Nova Scotia to help you do that.
There's always opportunities to save energy. That's what we like to hear. Thanks so much, Craig.
All right, thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Hey. So tell me, how are you helping out in the energy transition? Everyone's playing a part. All right, everyone. Well, that was our virtual field trip. Thanks so much for sticking around and watching it with us. Next up is going to be our Q&A session. So there was a lot of awesome info, and I'm sure a lot of interesting things that we saw in that video that we might have questions about. So now would be a great time, teachers, if you want to collect any questions or any Q&A questions from your class to ask Craig. And while we wait for that, Craig, I just wanted to get your first impressions. What did you think of the video? You know, a lot of the times we film these things, but then we don't get to see them until it's showtime. So, yeah, any observations?
I am definitely not an actor.
No, you
but
did amazing.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was really fun to do, and like I kind of mentioned in the video, like energy efficiency and jobs in energy don't necessarily have to be, you know, something like me. It can be, you know, filming and showcasing and education related stuff to show what energy efficiency can do for you. You know, if you like doing filming and video technology, marketing, communications, you know, even just telling the stories about energy efficiency can go a long way in the clean energy transition. Now, being an energy nerd myself, I would prefer more folks be in this role with me to help organizations and homeowners learn to save more energy and do the actual math to calculate the energy efficiency savings. But like I said in the video, there's a ton of opportunities career-wise in the energy field.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like what we were talking about, right? There's so many different skill sets that are required for all of these different things. You need the math people, you need the planning people, the communication people, and the people to build it and things like that, right? I know you mentioned, so do you do you do a lot of the math stuff, some of the numbers behind the scenes?
Yeah, so when I'm in my office, which is where I'm at today, I'm, you know, sitting at a computer with a spreadsheet open, doing energy savings calculations for all the various equipments that we showed in the video. So if somebody's looking to, say, upgrade their lights, I would sit down and figure out how long the lights are running in a typical day, what the wattage of each of those fixtures is, and then figure out what the consumption would be of the energy efficient lighting, and then just calculate the savings for that. Then I would write a little report that I present to the farmer to say, if you change your lights from what they are today to an LED, for example, you're going to save, you know, $100 a year, and that system is going to pay for itself in, say, a year or 2 years.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great example too of some of the math that you do and how those numbers. Sometimes I remember, being in school, you learn about math and how it works, but you don't necessarily think about the real life applications of it all the time. So
Mhm.
that's a great example of showing, just
Yeah,
exactly how those calculations and spreadsheets get used in the real world.
and that's some simplified stuff. When you're doing like heating loads for a refrigeration system, you're considering how much energy is contained in a liter of milk and how
Mm,
much energy it would take to cool that liter of milk by 1 degree or 2 degrees Celsius,
right.
and then multiply it by the total amount of milk and all of that. So there's a lot of very detailed and complicated math included in my day to day.
Lots of detail and complicated math to figure out how you got to cool down that milk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
one of the words to describe that, and the teachers will know this, is thermodynamics,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is
I was going to ask that.
not a fun course. It's very
Awesome.
challenging, but
Yeah,
yeah.
awesome. Well, we're starting to get some questions in from the classes and from some other engagement officers. So we have our first question here from Tao, who asked, that feed pushing robot in the video looks really cool. What powers it, and does it also help improve the farm's energy efficiency?
Yeah, so the feed pushing robot is battery powered, and it's just like your Roomba or your battery powered vacuum that you would have at home. So it's got a docking station at the end of the barn that it knows when the battery is getting low, that it will actually go back to its home charging station and recharge itself. It can last about 4 hours of pushing its feed, and in terms of energy efficiency, by using a battery system and an electric motor compared to what they used to do previously, which was drive a diesel-powered tractor with a box
Right.
blade on it to actually push the feed in. So a tractor is about 60% efficient at turning fuel into mechanical energy, and the robotic feed pusher is about 80 to 90% efficient.
Okay.
So it's much more efficient that way. And then also because the farm has solar panels,
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially charging the battery for free, so it doesn't actually cost the farmer anything compared to a tractor that would have a fuel cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. That's very interesting to know. We didn't really get into the weeds of that when I was there, but it's I figured,
Yeah.
especially with the solar panels powering everything, right? That like definitely helps and incentivizes to make things more electrical. Like, yeah, awesome. And yeah, if any students in the classes have questions for Craig or anything like that, like please, type them in the chat and we'll get them in here. We do have another question from Emma right now. It says, are these farms planning to use battery storage in the future to save their extra solar energy rather than sending it back to the grid? And this is actually a question that I've gotten a lot when I was working on the summer tour for Efficiency Nova Scotia last summer, was people would say, what is the advantage to the battery wall? If I'm sending electricity back to the grid, it'll all get kind of evened out in the long run. So is there a pro and con to have sending it in versus storing it yourself?
Yeah. So one of the great advantages of the net metering system is you're essentially using the solar when you need it, and then when you don't need it, you can push it back onto the grid and actually use the grid effectively as a battery. So it's the cheapest battery because it's free to do that.
Right.
But one of the things that farmers do talk about is future need for energy storage. And energy storage has specifically batteries have some great advantages where the farm can actually save the energy itself on the farm rather than running it through the meter. And that will help with times when the grid is out. They can switch to battery power for a certain period of time, and the solar panels, if it's sunny and the power is out, the solar panels will charge up that battery so they can use the energy on the farm. The other thing that batteries are really great at doing is helping control operational demand. And what operational demand is how much energy you're using at a certain period of time. So it's basically, if you think of energy as water flowing through a pipe, the energy demand is 90 times out of 10 you're only using a little bit of water flowing through that pipe, but there's sometimes when the tap is on full and you need all that water at once. And one of the things that batteries can do is actually help reduce your energy demand by absorbing some of the times when you need a lot of energy at once. So instead of pulling all that energy from the grid at one time, you can pull some of it from the grid and some of it from the battery at the same time. And it's cost effective because the Nova Scotia Power charges on a commercial side, Nova Scotia Power charges folks for demand. So
Okay.
by having a battery and reducing that demand through the meter, you don't have to pay as much to the utility.
Okay, I see. So yeah, there's pros and cons to both, options, but so having
Yeah,
kind of a
but
two-pronged approach
currently-
is probably optimal.
Yeah, exactly. And currently batteries are notoriously expensive, so that's why we haven't seen a huge adoption of them across the province yet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's like classic with any technology where they develop it, it's really expensive, and then eventually it becomes cheaper, and then it gets adopted kind of in a wider range.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. We've got some questions rolling in now from some of the classes. So Sarah McDonald's class asked, how much energy does the farm use in an average month?
So their power bill before they put the solar panels in. So now that they have the solar panels, their power bill is basically $0 every month. So they're effectively net zero.
Wow.
But before they put the panels in, their power bill was anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it costs a lot of money to milk cows.
Yeah,
It takes
especially
a
as
lot
yeah, and I know the power rates have been going up kind of quite consistently as well. So I bet that feels good to have it taken care of. Awesome. Another question, a couple questions here about the cows in the barn. So we've got one question. How old is the oldest cow on the farm, if you know? And then also, how is the barn heated?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how old the oldest cow is on this particular farm, but I've been to a couple of farms where the cows are around 10 years old. After they get any older than that, their milk production starts to taper off, and they get sent out to the fields to just hang out and be cows.
Awesome. And then is the barn heated? Yeah, sorry, that's the
So
question
so
there.
the barn is actually not heated, and the reason for that is with say 100 cows in the barn, each one of them generates a little bit of heat. It's enough heat in the barn because of all of the body heat from the cows to keep the barn relatively warm. And then with that particular barn, in the winter they can roll up the curtains to kind of close the windows essentially, and
Right.
just using the heat from the cows in the closed barn, it's typically warm enough for the cows.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that probably saves a lot of energy too, than not having to heat this massive space, right? Great. I got a question here again from Sarah McDonald's class. Do any farms use wind turbines instead of solar panels? I'll quickly interject here. My partner's her mom has a small hobby farm, and she installed like her own personal windmill maybe 25 years ago. So it's an old school one, but that's my own experience. And yeah, Craig.
Yeah, so wind turbines aren't as common as say solar panels, and it's kind of two reasons for that. One is wind turbines are much more expensive than solar for the equivalent amount of energy that they produce, and the other thing is wind turbines cost a lot more for maintenance. So anytime you have a mechanical system with a wind turbine, you have rotating blades and hub and all of the stuff that goes into making that wind turbine spin. It requires a lot more maintenance for lubricating all the bearings and that sort of thing. And like I said, the installation cost for a system, a wind system, is a little bit more expensive than solar, where solar is very passive. You set it on the barn roof or install it on the ground and you forget about it. You don't have to worry about there's minimal maintenance to it, where wind turbines have more maintenance. But that being said, there's places in Nova Scotia, we're a windy province, where wind turbines make sense. There are lots of farms across the province that do have wind turbines, both commercially purchased ones, as well as there's a few farms that have homemade ones, which are pretty neat.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I've never heard it spelled out that way, but it definitely, set it and forget it is very something that it's a very attractive feature, I think, of the solar panels, right?
Yeah.
Great. We've got a few more questions here from Amy Rafusis' class. What is your favorite energy efficient machine on the farm? So maybe your thing that you think is the neatest or your favorite thing.
Any of the robotic stuff is really neat. So the robotic feed pusher is pretty cool that, it knows where people are. It's got the sensors to avoid the folks. But it also knows, kind of how the barn is laid out and when to actually go and push the feed to the cows, so they know when lunchtime is. The other thing that I see common on dairy farms is robotic milkers, which are becoming more and more common. So the cows will actually essentially milk themselves. We didn't get, unfortunately, Linden Wright doesn't have a robot, so we didn't get a chance to kind of look at that. But that's one of my favorite things is to see a cow being milked automatically by a robot, which is kind of cool. But on that farm, I'd have to say the feed pusher robot.
Yeah, the feed pusher was a lot of fun, and it's definitely a bit nerve-wracking when it's slowly crawling towards you. But I mean, as soon as it bumped into me, it knew I was there.
I knew Jonah wasn't food.
Yeah, exactly. We've got another question here. How many baby cows are on the farm? So maybe how many like new calves are there per year?
Yeah, so I'll start with total numbers of cows. So that farm, total number of cows is about 250. There's about 95 being milked, and there's about another 100 or so that are either heifers or what they call dry cows, so they're just not milking right now. And then there's between 50 and 60 baby cows. And baby cows can be anything from a one day or a few hours old to 6 months.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Another question here. Are there any devices to help manage the manure produced that is energy efficient? So I imagine with that many cows, there's got to be a lot of leftovers. How does that get dealt with?
Yeah, so there's a combination of different systems that farmers use. At Linden Wright, they use a manure chain. So it's just a chain that runs in a loop along the alley. And it scrapes the alley, so it's got two arms that come out, and it just slowly pulls the manure all the way down to the manure pit. Then the arms fold in, it goes all the way back, and then it starts the cycle again. One of the new features is like the feed robot. There's also manure robots now, so I call them poop Roombas. But they essentially do the same thing as the feed robot, where they'll travel up and down the aisles and scrape the manure and dump it into the manure pit.
Okay.
Other farms will actually use a tractor or a skid steer to push it with the front blade. It all depends on the farm.
Yeah, totally. And like once it gets to the manure pit, does it go somewhere, or it just takes some time?
So once it goes to the manure pit, it will basically stay in the pit until it's needed for fertilizing the fields.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right. We've got a lot of questions coming in, so maybe in the sake of time, we can do kind of a rapid fire sort of thing.
Sure.
So question answer. So how many workers take care of the farm?
At Linden Wright, I think there's 7 of them.
Okay,
that
awesome.
work there, and it all depends on the farm size, on how many. I've seen farms where there's 200 employees.
Right, totally. Okay, so this is a smaller scale farm then.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question: do classes go on real field trips to that farm?
Yeah, there a lot of the dairy farms do have field trips. The Department of Agriculture has agriculture in the classroom, where they'll organize field trips in person to various farms across the province.
Okay, awesome. Does the feed machine that moves around the barn need to be programmed for each individual barn?
Yes, it does. And that's another job that you can do related to energy, is to actually program those robots.
Okay, awesome. Have you ever been bitten by a cow? I mean, I can answer that. We both got bit by cows during the filming of that video.
Yeah, I've been bitten, I've been licked, and I've been headbutted.
Okay, wow. I didn't get headbutted, thankfully, but they were hungry. They were chewing on my coat. How old is this farm? How old is Linden Wright Holstein?
That one I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think Harry's a second generation. So I'm going to say the early 1900s, like
Okay.
1930s, 1920s, 30s.
Okay, awesome. Do you know what the tags are for on the cows? Do they all have tags?
Yeah, so the tags are identification tags. So it helps the farmer track which cow is which and who they are, and helps them with knowing all the different metrics that they want to track. So how much the cow is producing, who's the mother, when it was born, all those sorts of things are tracked with those tags. And then they can also track, if they bought a cow, they can figure out where that cow came from, or if they sell a cow to another farm, the farmer that buys it knows that it came from, say, Linden Wright. And every cow in Nova Scotia, and I think across Canada, have some sort of identification tag.
Yeah, like a universal cow code, like a UCC or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, awesome. Cool. How much milk is produced daily at this farm?
This farm is producing between 2,500 and 3,500 liters a day.
Okay, that is a lot of milk. Awesome.
Like breakfast.
Another question. Yeah. Question here. Is it difficult to kind of retrofit or upgrade farms the older they are? So let's say maybe like building a new farm from the ground up versus kind of retrofitting a farm.
Yes and no. So it all depends on the actual barn. Retrofits typically cost more for older barns, just because they require a lot more upgrades. So, if you're installing lighting, for example, sometimes you have to run new wires, new fixtures, all that sort of thing in an older barn, where a newer barn, you might just have to replace the bulbs in the lighting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in terms of building a new barn, it's much more expensive to build a new barn than to retrofit an old barn. A new barn easily costs $2 to $3 million.
Holy moly! Yeah, that's a lot of moolah. No pun intended. Okay, cool. Good to know. I think we got a couple more questions here. I also see some classes are starting to leave, I think, because of just recess and lunch and different things like that. But we do have a few more questions here. What does a farm use if they don't have solar panels for energy?
So typically they'll pull electricity from the grid. A lot of farms also will have diesel for running their equipment. And then for heating hot water, it can be a mixture of electricity. Some use oil, fired hot water tanks, or propane. So it's a mixture of fuels, but primarily for dairy farms, it's electricity that they use.
Okay, cool. So yeah, they're not making.
Why solar panels make a huge amount of sense, because it generates electricity essentially for free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I imagine that's sort of if they're using a lot of electricity, solar panels are the next natural step, right? If they're looking for that. Is it at the point now? I've heard, but I'm not totally sure. Like, are we at the point where solar panels are becoming more and more cost effective as time goes on? Like, it's taking less years to pay it off in relation to how much energy it'll generate for you over time?
Yeah, so just to give you, so in 2012, when I started at Efficiency Nova Scotia, a solar project at that time would take about 22 years to pay for itself.
Wow.
And today, farmers are seeing paybacks of 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Instead of a half of a lifetime, it's a few years. And then with the incentives and grants from the province, the federal government, and Efficiency Nova Scotia, yeah, we can make it 5 years or less, even in some cases.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I mean, yeah, that really incentivizes you to. It's so much more, feasible, I think, for the average person to think about maybe getting solar panels at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for farms, a lot of times it's how much is it going to cost me per month? So if I'm paying Nova Scotia Power, say $1,000 a month, and I can buy solar panels and only have to pay $800 a month, a lot of times the farmer will go with the solar panels because it's a cheaper operational cost. And then at the end of 10 years, for example, with a loan, the panels are paid off and your energy's free.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome. I think we have a big thank you from class 6H. They have to head out now.
Yep. Thank you, class 6H.
Yeah, and I think a few more have I think we've lost a couple classes, but we've still got a few more people on the call. So a couple more questions here. What time is it? Yeah, we've still got a little bit of time as well, so no rush there. Now that the farm is more energy efficient with its upgrades, how much would be saving each year now? So I guess maybe pre-upgrade versus post-upgrade, if you know a ballpark of like the difference in energy use.
Yeah, so with Linden Wright, their power bill is essentially $0 a year, or $0 a month. And before they were paying $3,000 to $5,000 a month. So yeah, it's pretty significant. So the next logical step is to see how we can reduce their fuel bill, because they're still spending thousands of dollars a year on diesel for their tractors and other equipment. So we're looking at electrification. So switching your truck to an electric vehicle, switching some of the other equipment that still runs on diesel or gas to electricity, and then installing additional solar panels to offset those new loads. So effectively, that farm is looking to be net zero energy by 2030.
Okay.
So we have, 5 years to do it.
Okay, so they're net
That's the
zero
goal,
in terms of electricity, but then they've got the fuel that they're still burning. So
yeah, so they're trying to reduce their fuel consumption, whether it's through electrification or alternative green fuels like renewable natural gas or those sorts of things.
Okay, awesome.
Reduce. Yeah.
Well, I think there are no more questions coming in. I have a few more thank yous coming in from some of the classes. So I think we can end the conversation there. But yeah, I just want to say a big thank you from the Green Schools team to you, Craig, for all of your awesome insight and for showing us around the farm. It was really, really interesting. And I'm sure the classes got a lot of great information. I know I learned a lot of things as well. And some other people in the Green Schools room here with me are nodding and smiling that there's some awesome stuff happening in our province, and it's great to hear about it because it's not always these things that you see or you think about, especially I guess for us city folk thinking about what's going on rurally. So it's just some really inspiring stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for including me in this. It was a great experience, and I'm glad I'm able to share some of the knowledge that I have in my head with a wider audience, and hopefully I can inspire, I guess, some of the students that are on the call to join the energy efficiency revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this recording is going to go up on our YouTube channel, and as is just the virtual field trip as well. And there were maybe, I think, like 6 or 7 or 8 classes that they signed up, but they said they weren't able to come to this time slot, but they asked us to send the video to them as well. So all this information is going to make its way to many other classes and schools as time goes on. So
fantastic.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, thanks everybody in the Green Schools team, and thank you all the classes that were that joined, and the couple of classes that are still stuck around. Miss Corbin's class, hi everybody. Can I see a wave? There we go. It was a great experience, and thanks everybody that was involved.
All right. Well, see you everyone next time. Our virtual field trip series will kick off again next year, and we'll have some awesome new videos coming your way. So have a great rest of your day, everyone, and enjoy the beautiful weather.
All right, thank you.